welcome. Let me introduce myself, my husband Jun, and this channel. So my name is Nat. I'm half Danish on my father's side, and I'm half Polish on my mother's side. I live in Denmark. I speak Danish, Polish, and English. Then there's Jun. Jun is South Korean. He lives in the US. He speaks English and Korean. We communicate in English, but we are learning each other's languages, so Jun is learning Danish and Polish while I'm learning Korean. We've been together for 3.5 years, while married for 2. This makes us interracial, international, intercontinental, multicultural, multilingual, and in a long-distance relationship. All of this makes for a pretty unique situation, I think. So I thought that if anyone out there is just half as curious about me as I am about them, then maybe someone might want to drop by this YouTube channel every now and then to see what's up with us. I'll be sharing a bit of everything. So a little about my life in Denmark, a little about my Polish side, a little about the Danish and Polish and Korean cultures, and a little about us. About our successes and our struggles, though to be honest, we haven't actually had that many struggles. Whenever people talk about long-distance relationships, they always talk about them in the context of how hard they are. But that's just not what it's been like for us. I kid you not when I say that we had the easiest, smoothest, and most happy relationship. Of course we prefer to be together, but we both have fulfilling lives where we live now. We both have families and friends and jobs and hobbies, so none of us are that eager to move to where the other one lives. And so that's what this channel is for. I will be making videos about our unusual life. And you are more than welcome to join. Actually, I'd be quite thrilled if you would. Until now, it was mostly Jun who traveled, as he would fly to Denmark to visit me, but we have also traveled quite a lot together. The plan going forward, though, is that I will be traveling back and forth between Denmark and the US. Now, there are several reasons for this. So firstly, there are the US immigration laws. And secondly, even more importantly, is that my mom is not in good health, so I simply can't leave her. So I will be traveling back and forth between June in the US and my mom in Denmark. All the pictures and videos in this video are from our latest trip to Korea. That trip happened November of 2025, and this was our 3rd trip to Korea. We also have a ton of footage from Denmark, Poland, the United States, Hungary, and Iceland. Some of these countries we have visited several times, and I would love to post some videos about these trips. Now, if anything I've said has given rise to any questions, then leave them in a comment and I will try to answer them in an upcoming Q&A. Now, I bet you've wondered how we met. A Korean boy living in the US and a Danish-Polish girl living in Denmark. So let me now tell you the story of how the two of us met. Jun and I, we met on an app, but it wasn't a dating app. It was a language exchange app. And we had 2 vastly different reasons for being on the app. Jun's reason was that he was coming to Copenhagen, which is the capital of Denmark, and he was coming all by himself, alone, for a 1-week vacation. And this was in the summer of 2022. So he was on the app to get in touch with locals. He wanted travel advice, so he was hoping to get in touch with locals on the app. And I was on the app because I wanted to learn a new language. I knew it was going to be an East Asian language, but I didn't know at this point which. So I was still undecided and I was new to this app. And Jun messaged me. He just sent me like a wavy hand emoji sticker thing. And I am not from Copenhagen, I'm from Aarhus. So I asked a coworker who is in Copenhagen almost every other weekend, and he absolutely had 1,000 ideas of what Jun could do while he was in Copenhagen. I wrote everything down and I sent the entire list to Jun with a disclaimer, because obviously this was secondhand knowledge. But Jun was so thankful that a complete stranger had gone out of her way to help him out like this. So we kept in touch. This was a week prior to his vacation in Copenhagen. And after a couple of days, I suggested that I could come to Copenhagen so we can meet face to face. And he refused. I want to point out here that I didn't suggest it because of any romantic reason. Quite the contrary. His profile picture on the app was a little bit funny. His face was almost a little bit featureless. The lighting or the filters or exposure, I don't know what it was, but something, I don't know, it was just strange. Then he refused. He didn't want me to come to Copenhagen to meet with him. He immediately suggested that he should come to Aarhus to meet me. So he didn't want me to travel for two reasons. One, he didn't want to inconvenience me, and two, he wanted to see a second town while in Denmark and not just get Copenhagen. And Aarhus is the second biggest town in Denmark, so that turned out great. And I suggested that for his travel from Copenhagen to Aarhus to not take the bus, not take the train, because those are boring, but to instead take the Combardo Express, which is a ferry bus combo. So you get on a bus which goes on the ferry, which sails across the strait and then gets off in Aarhus. And then while on the ferry, you get off the bus and you can either eat something at one of the restaurants on board the ferry, or you can just enjoy the gorgeous view of the sea from the deck. And he was again just so grateful that even just the travel time I had made so much more special for him. Now he has arrived. This is a Saturday and I was gonna be late by an hour. And I, of course, messaged him well in advance and asked if it was okay that, you know, if we could postpone with 1 hour. And he said, yeah, of course, sure. So what he didn't know is that I live 5 minutes from where we had agreed to meet. And he thought I was coming from somewhere far away, so he thought I might be excused for being an hour late. And he later found out that I literally live 5 minutes from where we're gonna meet. Yeah. So anyway, when we finally did meet, it wasn't love at first sight. I'm sorry if I'm disappointing anyone here, but it really wasn't. It wasn't for me and it wasn't for him. And it was still just intellectual curiosity. We wanted to meet someone who was so completely different from us, different culture, different upbringing, different continent, all of that. So I had met lots of foreigners, but never anyone born and raised in East Asia. So this was just curiosity. And I was his guide around Aarhus and I showed him everything. We walked 33,000 steps that day. So I showed him Latina Kvarter, which are Latin quarters, like this old romantic cobblestone part of Aarhus. I showed him Aarhus Ø, which is this artificially created landmass into the Bay of Aarhus, connected to the peninsula. Very modern, everything there is so modern, so new. Really cool place, lots to entertain, even water sports and things in the bay. And then city center, I showed him the harbor, I showed him the cathedral from the 13th century, even the queen's summer residence. We had a queen in Denmark at that time. She's since abdicated and we now have a king, but at the time it was a queen, so we walked all the way to her summer residence, and which is in the south of Aarhus. I have a screen print, which I am going to try to show you right here, the screen print from Google Maps, and you can see where we went, but it didn't quite do a good job in drawing a precise route of where we went. It looks like we went through buildings. We didn't. We behaved very nicely. We followed all the sidewalks. By the end of that day, it was 10 in the evening and we'd been together since 2 or 3 in the afternoon, and I had completely forgotten that the poor boy needed to eat. And I hadn't eaten anything myself either, but I have a funny tummy, so I can either not eat an entire day and be perfectly fine, or I can eat an entire day and be perfectly fine. So I was obviously not bothered by not having eaten, but I could tell that he was hungry, and I felt so bad because by the time we got back into town, we took the bus back into town. I mean, I could have walked back into town, obviously, but he was tired, so he even actually asked whether we could take the bus back. So of course we did, and then we got back into town. I was trying to find a place where we could go have some dinner, but all the restaurants were closing up. So poor boy didn't get any food. But what did happen was that we took a selfie. There's a funny story with the selfie. I had a coworker at work who did not believe that June was real. He thought that June was a catfishing robot scam. So I was going to take a picture with June to prove that he existed. And I asked June very awkwardly, yeah, I know this is odd and weird. I know we just met, but would you mind if we took a selfie together? So we did. June didn't mind at all, and I could prove June's existence to my coworker. The coworker later had to admit that he was wrong, and he even bought ice cream for the entire unit. That was a fun story. How many couples have pictures from the first day they met? I think very, very few. So that's really, really cool. Okay, back to my story, which I've completely forgotten where I left off. I was wearing ballerinas for that 33,000 step walk, and my toenail and my pinky turned blue-black and actually fell off a couple of, I think, days or weeks later. I don't remember. That was, yeah, what you don't do for strangers, you know? Anyway, we didn't have dinner that day, and I felt so bad that I offered to have lunch with him the next day, and he agreed, to my surprise, actually. Of course, the next day I was late again by an hour. But again, I had texted him well in advance and asked if we could postpone our meeting, and he was absolutely fine with it. So, and again, I lived like 5 minutes from the cafe where we had agreed to meet. He's since learned, obviously, where I live and how far I had to walk both days, so he has been teasing me. Anyway, we had smørbrød at the cafe, at the restaurant, which are these Danish open-faced sandwiches. And we went for drinks, and then June headed back to the bus. I mean, I walked with him back to the bus, but we did take a few more selfies before he got on the bus, and he went back to Copenhagen to finish the rest of his vacation there. And we kept being in touch, and then a few weeks later, he asked if I wanted to meet him again, which I really did. So he asked if I maybe would like to join him in Iceland, and I did. I was kind of terrified because I hadn't flown in 12 years and I'd never alone, so I didn't even know like how to book a flight ticket or how to get to the airport by myself. So I was a bit stressed at the same time, but then we met in Iceland, and that's actually our first date. So anyway, that's what the next video is going to be about. Actually, it's going to be the trip to Iceland, our first date. It was a 4-day trip, and it was just absolutely amazing. So if you maybe are curious about that next video and about that next trip, then maybe consider subscribing so that you won't miss it. I hope you will. Thank you so much for listening. Take care, and I hope to see you again. Bye.